You are now entering the spoiler zone. The following podcast contains explicit plot details and pockets of profanity. You have been warned.
The Exton Moss Experiment. Adventures in Wine and Space with Simon Exton and Ken Moss.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Exton Moss Experiment. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And we are joined this episode by...
Hello, I'm Simon Hart, and I'm very pleased to be back again.
Hello.
Hello. It's lovely to have you back, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. Today, we are going to be watching Ace of Wands. It's a 3-part story called Sisters Deadly. I didn't choose this. Which one of you is going to own up?
It was my fault, with some prompting from Simon.
I think it counts as a sort of mutual decision.
It was. Ace of Wands is a show that I've discovered earlier this year when I had COVID, which is possibly the best or, in fact, the worst time to find this show because it really blew my mind when my mind wasn't working very, very well at all. And this one in particular.
Am I really watching this, or is it the COVID playing tricks on my mind?
Well, because we're badly prepared this time, there is no tonic screwdriver, although rest assured, dear listeners, we do have gin. So we're going to skip all this bit and go straight into the Black Archive. Guests first. Si, what would you like to rescue from the annals of lost TV?
Okay, well, on the theme of today's episode, I would like to rescue the Ace of Wands episode 7 Serpents, Sulphur and Salt, which
Try saying that with a lisp.
Which is the first episode of the second series, which introduces apparently the fairly iconic Mr. Stabs, who was their arch enemy in this particular episode. And it just sounds really interesting and really great. I'm only just really finding out about Ace of Wands at the moment, and the first 2 series had a completely different regular cast other than Tarot. And it'd just be really nice to see Sam and Luli and see them facing off against a really wicked villain. I think it sounds really great.
I mean, Mr. Sweet, who is a regular in the first 2 seasons, does appear in the 3rd season, but he's not one of the regulars. So there is a crossover there. And the Mr. Stabs character, who's played by Russell Hunter, reappears twice more.
Yes,
one in a
he appears in 2 different shows, doesn't he, apparently?
One in Shadows, one in Drama Armour. He's only played by Russell Hunter in the first one of those, and I can't remember which comes first. They're available on the Ace of Wands box set, and they're both pretty good.
Yes. Yeah, I think David Jason plays him on the second one, doesn't he? That's right. Which is interesting casting. So, yeah. But I just think it'd be great to see him facing off Tarot. The story sounds like it's one that all the cast remember really well, had really good memories of working on, and all felt it was the best one that they'd done. So, yeah, it would be great to see that.
And I think it's one of the ones that an off-air soundtrack has surfaced reasonably recently.
Oh, right. Interesting.
I think
that's good.
2 or 3 of the second series where soundtracks have resurfaced. I've no idea where you'd be able to hear them, but I think 7 Serpents, Sulphur and Salt is one of the stories that now has a soundtrack.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that. Was that a Kaleidoscope thing?
I don't know. And I say recently, it's probably 10 years ago or something. The Twitter user Fred Owl probably knows because he seems to be the expert on Ace of Wands.
What are you rescuing this time?
I'm going to rescue another 1970s kids' TV science fiction programme from ITV, a thing called The Georgian House, which is a time travel drama. A couple of episodes exist. Network have put them out on DVD and it looks pretty good. There's one episode, I think, that is on home video format rather than a video master. But it would be nice to have all 7 episodes in broadcast quality.
Splendid.
And how about you?
Well, I'm going for a series called How. That was first broadcast in 1966. It was a home encyclopedia delivered to your fireside, presented by Fred Dinage, Bunty James, Jack Hargreaves and John Miller. Now, I am familiar with later iterations of it, How To. But Fred Dinage was still on board in those days. That would have been in the sort of 80s, 90s.
Yeah, that was Carol Vorderman, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Gaz Top.
Oh, Gaz Top, that was the one. I could picture him in my mind. I couldn't remember his damn name. Where are they now? But yeah, there's 98% of the original run of episodes.
Carol Vorderman, I think she's done quite well for herself.
He's off.
I remember watching the original and really enjoying it. It was one of those. Did it come before Magpie or after Magpie?
It was 5:25 according to the BFI, so surely that would have been after.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were fascinating programs when I watched them. If Fred Dinage was in there right from the beginning, I imagine they followed a fairly similar format. But yeah, so that's my rescue.
That's how for now.
I've now got the How theme tune in my head.
Well, don't panic too much because we've got the Ace of Wands theme tune coming up. We have done Ace of Wands before, but just give us a run through, Dr. Exton, as to what Ace of Wands actually was. What was the premise of it?
Right, it was a 3-series children's TV sci-fi mystical adventure drama focusing on a stage magician who had real sort of mystical powers called Tarot. In the first couple of years, he was assisted by his stage assistant, Lully, played by Judy Lowe, widow of Richard Beckinsale. Although she wouldn't have been widow at
Not
that
at
point.
that time, no.
And they had a telepathic link between them, and also his roadie, Chaz. For the third series, those two regulars are replaced by brother and sister, Mickey and... Oh, that's Chaz.
That is Chaz, yeah.
Sam.
Oh, it's Sam.
Sam was the one in the
series.
first series. Tony Selby. Yeah, so it's Mickey and Chaz, brother and sister. Mickey takes over as the stage assistant. Chaz is sort of an entrepreneur with a million different businesses, none of which he seems particularly good at. Although he does take some good photos in this one. And the plots are all quite weird and cartoony. Larger-than-life villains, giant chess sets, statues that turn people to chalk, giant dolls' houses, mad hypnotising old seamstresses, impossibly beautiful aliens selling crap to elderly people so it can turn on them and kill them. That one exists. It's a really good episode, and we can do that at some point. The Beautiful People, which is the very last story, and possibly ends up with the death of the regulars at the end of it. But anyway, we can come on to that at another point.
Well, since the box set has landed on my doorstep with a thump, I can watch the whole of Series 3 at my leisure now.
You can, absolutely, and enjoy.
Yes.
And you should.
Yeah. Do I need COVID to enjoy it, Si?
It's entirely possible that might aid your enjoyment of it, though I can't necessarily recommend that.
My COVID recovery was 60s Doctor Who, and I think one of the first ones that I watched while I was still really quite away with the fairies with it was The Web Planet, which was interesting. I mean, I love The Web Planet, but COVID delirium gave it a
that may not
whole
be
extra.
the greatest choice at that point.
It was fantastic.
And you watched Meglos, which you hate, but that was only because it was within easy reach, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Without further ado, we're going to launch straight into this. It's the 3-part story, Sisters Deadly, from 1972. Ron VT.
19, 20 pounds exactly. A triumph, a veritable triumph, a stroke of genius, Father Nature. Just to think that young man was made to commit a robbery like this and then made to forget everything about it.
How many more times have you got to be told? The Major had nothing to do with it.
All the same,
He was merely the guiding force.
the planets must have been in his favour.
We'll have to find some way of cashing those.
Cashing them.
Well, not their money, aren't they?
Matilda, how could you? To cash these postal orders would be stealing. We're not common criminals.
What do you propose to do with them?
Send them back, of course.
Send them back?
Yes, I shall pop them into the letterbox outside the village stores. Nobody will know where they come from.
You're going mad in your old age.
Our objectives are far more important than stealing postal orders.
We could rob the Bank of England without even being there.
We have far more important things to consider. Unless, of course,
Unless...
well, that young man, the photographer, what happens if the Major's treatment doesn't work? Suppose he forgets what he's supposed to do.
He won't forget. The Major won't let him. He'll come back. when we want him.
Right, children, I'm handing it over to you boys, because that was fucking mental.
So, as guests, would you like to explain what we've just watched?
Well, okay, where do we start? So basically, Chaz goes off to photograph a birthday party for a 100-year-old woman called Matilda Edgerton. And it all goes downhill very quickly from there. So he turns up to this party of old ladies who are having fun, and then suddenly he is knocked out unconscious by the amazing Sylvia Coleridge, who is always a joy to watch. And he is then possessed by the spirit of the mysterious Major, or is it Matilda? We're not quite sure for a while.
Yeah, about 3 minutes, I think.
Aren't we?
Yes. Well, again, when I was watching this the first time, my COVID brain was not quite processing this and thinking something is not quite right about Matilda, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And as soon as I realised, it was just, well, of course. So Chaz is then possessed. He robs the local post office while he's possessed and gets away with it, and it gets away with £100 in some kind of postal order, I think, that they're going to cash in. And this is the test for a bigger plan, which is going to be the taking over of the local military base, where they're going to impose new order on the world because no one shows anyone any respect anymore, and they want to take the world back to having old values. But meanwhile, it is revealed later on that Matilda is actually James Bree in drag.
Really? Never.
I know, shocking, isn't it? And he is actually the Major, who has very strange mind powers, that he has a mind battle with Tarot, which is very cool and very good, and has basically possessed all the old ladies, who will then go into attack mode. They attack Mickey in her car in a brilliant cliffhanger where they're just all leering at her and laughing at her around her Fiat 500. Just amazing. Just one of the best TV cliffhangers I have ever seen. One of them is holding up the keys and grinning at her so she can't get away. And then basically with Chaz, they then attack the general from the local military base. Sylvia Coleridge does more knocking out of people, but fortunately Tarot is there and is able to foil the plot, and it all ends okay. I think that's it. If I've missed anything, I'm very sorry. It's just sometimes my brain has frozen on the plot of this one because it's very, very strange.
You've missed my very, very favourite bit of this, and it's a tiny little clip, and it is just an utter joy. The old lady's going to attack mode in episode 3. There is a little fragment where they all bounce up from behind a bush.
Oh, yes!
It is just an utter joy.
And they're all grinning.
Yes.
They're having a great time.
They're on their saga day out.
They never stop simpering the whole way through.
Did you know that one of them was Old Sarah Kingdom?
No.
Yes.
One of them I did recognise from somewhere. Come on, let's do alumni, get them out of the way, then we can rip this thing to shreds.
We can rip it to shreds with love because it is wildly entertaining. But okay.
Well, the first one I've got, I know you're going to mention her anyway, but Amelia Ducar.
Absolutely.
Sylvia Coleridge is in this.
Well, Sylvia Coleridge was in everything. Yeah, she was Amelia Ducar, but she also turns up in Artemis 81. Now, have either of you seen Artemis 81?
No.
I know, but you've mentioned there's a podcast of it that's meant. It sounds really gripping.
Utterly bonkers. Yeah, and she did some legitimate stuff as well because she was in Ghost Sonata, and I've seen that version of it, and it's absolutely brilliant. She does a very entertaining turn in Blake 7.
She certainly does.
She's in Blake.
In a leotard.
What?
Oh, it's fantastic. The Clout.
Amelia Ducar in a leotard.
Absolutely.
I don't think I need to see this.
Oh, you do. You really do.
Oh, you have the discs now.
Oh, God, yeah, I've just been presented, which will sing to you, Si. Dr. Exton's kindly presented me with his complete set of old Blake 7 DVDs because he's replaced them with a shiny new box set. So I now...
Oh, very good.
Well, I can now start listening to Maximum Power, your podcast, because I didn't want to listen to it until I could watch along with you. And now I can.
Excellent.
Yes. So now I can actually listen to your work.
Yeah, and she was also one of the regulars in the Lotus Eaters first series.
She was,
she
yes,
is
and she
brilliant.
was ever so good.
Oh, she's fantastic. Because
She's a slightly disturbed lady. And
mad as a box of
brilliant.
frogs, I think is the phrase you're looking for. But Ken, you've not seen the Lotus Eaters?
No, I haven't.
It's
no.
brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a Michael J. Bird, isn't it? And it's one of his first ones. And
it's excellent and atmospheric and creepy and strange.
Yeah. He's the one that went on to do Don't Pay the Ferryman and The Aphrodite Inheritance and
right.
Maelstrom and The Lotus Eaters. Ran for 2 series. The leads were Wanda Bentham and Ian Hendry as a married couple running a bar on... It's Crete, that one, isn't it? Is it Crete or Cyprus?
Ian Hendry running
Crete,
a bar.
yeah.
Is that a good idea?
Ponder the irony. And there are a load of expats who are regulars in this bar, and each episode focuses on the backstory of one of these expats, and one of whom is Sylvia Coleridge, and she is brilliant. They all are. It's a fantastic series we must do at some point.
Yeah, and she turns up, I think, as a eccentric professor in an episode of The Tomorrow People as well,
does.
not very long after
God
this.
damn. I am cursed, aren't I? With the Tomorrow People is just going to follow me about.
It's going to come back and haunt you.
And she's in a brilliant, brilliant episode from the first season of Out of the Unknown. She's the wife in the dead past, and she just puts in a brilliant and quite heartbreaking performance. I'll not spoil the plot of that because we're going to do it at some point.
But does she do every part with that sort of simpering, upward inflection on everything? Because she was Amelia Dukai in this. I assume that she was...
Watch Blake 7. She has a very different voice in that.
She certainly does.
So moving on from Sylvia Coleridge.
Do we have to? She's lovely.
She is. She's absolutely wonderful. Do you know this story was written by Victor Pemberton?
This one?
Yes. this
Sister's
one.
Deadly?
Yes.
Oh, well.
So Michael Mackenzie, Tarot, made a bit of a later career in playing doctors because he was the regular pathologist Dr. Baird in Taggart for quite a while and was also Dr. Turner in Cardiac Arrest, tipped up in the Omega Factor. He turns up in Blake 7 as well, though I can't remember who he plays. Roy Holder was Krelper in Caves of Androzani.
Did he still have that lump on his nose in Caves of Androzani? Because I've never noticed it.
I think his whole face has just become a little more craggy, so it's sort of blended in.
Yeah. And he's Ronnie Corbett's friend throughout Sorry as well, from what I remember.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The one who's always encouraging him to leave his mum and go off into the world and get out there. So
I've not seen Sorry since Transmission. I just remember it having a madly inappropriate title sequence that didn't really fit the programme.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all neon flashy lights, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
The title music is called Psych Music. It's one of the random bits of crap that are cluttering up my brain. Anyway, I'm interrupting Dr. Exton. Who else is in this?
Well, we are here to chat.
I know, but he's the only one of us that does some actual research. I research as we record.
Letting our secrets away there.
Yes. They know, they know.
It is a surprise to no one. Of the old ladies, Lucy Griffiths was one of the killer old ladies in the Adam Adamant episode League of Uncharitable Ladies.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
That we've
yes.
seen. Well, possibly not, because Kathleen St. John was one of the old people in the Quatermass Conclusion. So you might be recognising from there.
Possibly, but I can picture it now in Adam, that one. That I'll try that again with my own teeth. I know how to start saying Adam, but not how to stop.
The wonderfully named Maisie Monty, who, despite her wonderful name, didn't have an awful lot of interesting credits, and this was her last acting credit. May Warden is best known, particularly in Germany, as Miss Sophie in Dinner for One.
That's her.
That's her. And she was also Old Sarah Kingdom in The Destruction of Time.
Just
fantastic.
I'm going to throw in a random here. Last night we watched Adventure in Space and Time. And there were 2 things they were planning to do. One was with the Third Doctor, a segment with Mark Gatiss playing that, but the other one that they didn't film was a reconstruction of the end of Destruction of Time with Jean Marsh playing Old Sarah Kingdom. And they never got to film it. They didn't have the money to film it.
Oh, no. Oh,
How
what a shame.
marvellous would that have been? I think the moment has passed, but that would have been superb.
So now we come on to James Bree. I can't.
Keeper.
I was going to say he had a pseudonym. He basically had a drag name.
Henrietta Rudkin, yes. Do you know that there's not a Wikipedia entry for her?
Really? How odd.
That's James Bree's drag name. Yes, he was the... He was the Keeper of the Matrix and the Ultimate Foe. He was also Nefrid in Full Circle, the security chief in the War Games. He played the regular character Gaston in Secret Army. He was Dinwiddie Snoodle in Galloping Galaxies.
Oh, Galloping Galaxies. You're a bit old to remember that, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fucking mental.
Yes, it was.
Again, tipped up in loads of stuff. A couple of episodes of The Avengers. He was in The Prisoner. He was in Spindo. He was in The Ratcatchers. Randall and Hopkirk. Loads and loads of things. Bartlett Mullins played the second elder in The Sensorites and an elder in The Savages. He played Gramps in the pilot episode of Adam Adamant Lives. He again was in The Prisoner, turns up in The Changes, Freewheelers, is in a couple of episodes of Virgin of the Secret Service, which, Si, if you haven't seen, is wildly entertaining.
Oh, right, okay. Yep, that's a new one on me.
Yeah, we've got an episode coming up on that, and I've spent most of it calling Ken jingoistic because it's all very British.
God, here we go. This is the point where I play Deutschland über alles in the background when he gets on this sort of rant.
I don't think I was particularly ranty. For me.
It starts, it's beginning. You see the first faint glimmerings.
Frank Duncan was a regular in Luna. Whoops, Apocalypse. And again, turned up in The Lotus Eaters.
I really have to watch this thing, don't I?
The Lotus Eaters. Yeah.
You've mentioned it dozens of times over the years.
It is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So there we go. That's my alumni list.
Well, we've already skirted around the elephant in the room, but the twist of this three-part story is blindingly obvious from about the second scene. Chaz screams through this lovely bucolic country village on his mini motorbike, rocks up at a cottage, goes in, and the very first thing I thought was, why is there an old man in drag in a wheelchair? I mean, could they not have done an Anthony Ainley and had an actual old lady, and then it's at the end there's some sort of latex reveal rather than what we got, which is a terrible...
Or, even simpler, and would fit in perfectly, a veil.
Yes,
exactly. That would have hidden it, wouldn't it?
It would have hidden it very well, young man, instead of putting on this voice for 3 episodes. Can you tell that I'm not a woman? Can you?
Fuck's sake. Can we? I don't know whether we can actually discuss this without being transphobic, but that was dreadful. Oh, that was the worst plot twist to reveal in your very first scene. Who was taken in by this? How many children genuinely thought, there's something off about that old man? Yes, so that summed up the entire thing. It was, you knew what the twist was going to be, and I'll use that term very loosely, but the whole plot was mental. This demented major, how should I turn the clock back to the 1940s? Oh, I'll recruit a load of octogenarians.
But... can we just backtrack a little bit?
No, we can't.
Yes.
That's the only thing we should focus on.
No, we're going to backtrack a little bit because I want to say how fantastically trippy the title sequence is.
Oh,
God, the
agreed.
title sequence is the best thing about the show, isn't it? The song and the titles are absolutely
the bouncing old ladies behind the bush
amazing.
are the best thing about the show.
I would drop in a clip at this point, but it's so visual, you have to watch it, kids.
Yeah. And the song is just so wonderfully late 60s psychedelia, and yeah, it's magnificent. There's a full version of it available on Spotify, which is well worth a listen. It's really good. Yeah.
Of all the things we've ever watched, it is the most 70s title sequence. The music is very Jethro Tull, even though it's not. I can't remember who does it now. I'm sure one of you will tell me.
Andrew Bone.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful name. But it gets in your head. In fact, this morning when I woke up with a screaming headache thanks to a Doctor Who drinking game, that was in my head. I've just not been able to shift it. It's just there. But it's very simple. It's a montage of still images put together with psychedelia. It's quite a simple title sequence, but my God, it gets in your head. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
There's that great bit where the ACE of Ace of Wands flashes up on the hand right in time with the music that works really, really well.
For us, probably. Not for epileptics, though.
No, maybe not. It's a bit flashy.
And I have to mention the astrology clock.
Oh, the thing that doesn't work.
The thing that looks at the moment Mickey touches it as though it's about to collapse into pieces. And then a scene later, it's suddenly much more robust. So I think she's given that a good spin. And that arrow has come flying off and twatted somebody.
Well, they place massive emphasis on this tarot clock for the first half of episode 1, and then it's never seen again. But they never actually explain how it works. It's just they spin it, it plays a bit of music, and then it points randomly to whoever's using it, their astrology sign, except that it doesn't, because Mickey spins it and it points to Tarot's astrology sign, and then Tarot spins it and it points to Chaz's astrology sign 6 or 7 times. So it doesn't work very well. And it's never explained what the fucking thing actually does. It's just this big whirly wheel that he's paid God knows how much for, with all the signs of the zodiac on it in a circle. What does it do? One of you tell me that I've missed...
Well, it looks nice. That's something.
The way it's decorated, it looks as though an 8-year-old has been let loose with a glue gun and some spangles.
But what does it do?
Fuck all.
It pads the episode out so that
There we
Taro
go, yes.
and Mickey don't get involved in the plot till a bit later on.
It's a stage prop, so it's there to look shiny. And it does that. I mean, it looks as though it's shiny and about to collapse, but it looks shiny.
I'm just quite impressed that they spent 12 and a half minutes not explaining what it does, but it's terribly
Trotting about with
important.
it.
Yes.
And during that 12 and a half minutes, the looks between Mickey and Taro are incredibly flirty.
Oh, aren't they just?
I mean,
You
she's
feel
not
like
quite
there's
licking her
something
lips,
going
but
on
she's not
there.
far off.
Well, I was going to ask you both about this because, well, Si, you were clearly in a COVID delirium when you've been watching this, so possibly not. But Dr. Exton, is it just that bubbling undertone between Taro and Mickey? Because it's quite coupley in certain scenes. Like in the very last scene where they all have a party and the lovely, wobbly, randy old ladies turn up for a nipple glass of champagne, and Mickey's barely contained tits are in that tight little top, and they're sat on the settee together. He's got his arm draped over the back of the settee, pretty much around her.
And Chaz is off being touched up by the old ladies.
Yes. Well, he's up in the air, isn't he? He's a young man.
Yeah, out of reach.
Well, we don't know what some of his other business interests are. Thinking about Chaz and the old ladies, and I know that I've just given Ken a mental image that he doesn't want.
One more.
Oh, that's dreadful even for you.
Edit that out.
Edit that out. Who are we kidding? No, I was going to say that the brainwashing scene with Chaz, where he's sort of suspended up on
Wires.
No, that chaise longy thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's just him and his reactions and the voices over the top of it. And they're all his voices, aren't they? That was a brilliantly acted scene.
That was really nicely done, I thought. And because they're also using the fisheye lens on those scenes, it looks a bit visually trippy as well. Yeah, really, really good.
That actually is the one scene that did stand out to me, because you're left wondering, is that all in his head or did that just really happen? And visually, there's some quite good stuff in this. We're ripping the piss out of it, but for what we were, early 70s.
72.
Yeah, visually, it's not bad.
No, one of the scenes that stood out for me is when Taro is down in the basement and he is doing the magic tricks as Chaz is sort of advancing on him.
Yeah.
And that's really well done. And obviously, Michael Mackenzie is doing all those magic tricks for real. He was taught how to do all of those.
By Ali Bongo.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Well, who else would it be in the 70s? And he's producing the bunches of flowers and the flags out of the matchbox and things like that. And that's really, really good.
He had to learn those, and they were acted with conviction. He's clearly practiced these and rehearsed them so that they look convincing. And they did look convincing. So I'm with you on that. I think that was a really nice little sequence.
I mean, I think overall it was sort of fairly nicely directed. So the director is Daryl Blake, who, again, goes on to direct several episodes of The Tomorrow People, but sort of most notably, probably for all of us, is that he directs the Doctor Who story, The Stones of Blood.
I did not know that, because The Stones of Blood is my favourite segment of The Key to Time. Mm-hmm. Largely because of Amelia Rumford sausage sandwiches.
Rumford and Ducat's detective agency.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
We have postulated this as a theory before. That
No, we did Rumford and Tyler before because
you don't call me Grammar.
There's going to come a time when I'm too old for this kind of thing. Because the loony old trout is one of my favourite characters ever to appear in Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. She is superb.
I did notice quite a creepy bit in this where Tara...
Just the one.
And one that we haven't mentioned so far, where Tara goes into the post office and scares the crap out of this poor little old lady and then laughs about it.
Yes, he does. One of the other things that we've watched where there was a very easy and simple way out of it was Buck Rogers in the 25th century, where Buck Rogers and some of his cronies get trapped, and I use the word very loosely, on this planet full of incredibly beautiful women. And they get beaten up by them, when in actual fact, a good hearty slap would have got them running for the hills within a moment's notice. And I do find it a little bit of a stretch of credence that they're all trapped by the lovely, wobbly, randy old ladies. They would have been snapped like twigs if they'd really wanted to get out. But conscience wouldn't allow it. Dr. Exton's desperately scrabbling for a morally correct reply here.
No, I'm not. I'm about to tell you a little bit about my day job, because I look after elderly people in hospital. Quite a number are elderly ladies, and when they get a waterworks infection and get delirious with it, they could battle a herd of elephants. They become incredibly resilient and strong, and you do not mess with them. You just throw antibiotics at it. But God, it sorts itself out because the inner strength.
Never take on an octogenarian with a kidney infection. You will die.
And the other thing
There's your moral for today.
And the other thing is, again, getting back to my day job, 80 and 90-year-olds generally don't have an awful lot wrong with them other than the fact that they're 80 and 90, because anybody with anything that's going to knock you off will have done that before then. So I see an awful lot of people who have been incredibly fit and healthy and only come into hospital because they've fallen off the perch with a chest infection or something. But in and of themselves, they're doing pretty well.
I've just got this image in my mind now of a load of Marvel superheroes that are, Nefrito or Siroso. By day, they're Doris Stokes, 103 years old, but by night, they're Kidney Infecto.
I think Doris Stokes had her own superpowers.
It was utterly mental. But, and I've said this with so many things, it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, it was. I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting it without COVID. and I thought it held up pretty well. I mean, apparently the script was a last-minute replacement for something that had fell through, and they were asked to do a cheap episode, but it doesn't really show as sort of in comparison to the rest of the series, I don't think. And yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, and the whole plot of wanting to go back to the glory days of the Empire has a lot of modern resonance as well.
Brace, here it comes.
I'm just going to leave that there.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the plot actually made no sense.
Bugger all.
So
5 lovely, wobbly, randy old ladies are going to capture the general of the British Army and then convince him to turn everybody back to the 1940s and better times.
And Chaz mincing about in his army drag.
He looks very happy in those.
He's not happy that he might have lost his hair.
Wheeling about in my army drag, young man. I'm a major, you know, but you're not supposed to know.
Oh, God. James Bree in drag. I'm never going to look at the Keeper of the Matrix in the same way again.
And actually, going back to plot...
There was one?
Who was the Major? Because the only...
Exactly, because that's not explained, is it? It's just mentioned that he's a family friend and that the sisters had known him when they were younger.
As a handsome young man in their
Yes.
father's regiment. So presumably he's older than the sisters.
But when he's revealed, he doesn't look older, other than the vague attempt to make James Bree's hair slightly grey.
I'm very glad that you two have pointed this out, because I was left at the end thinking, is he a serving major that sort of adopted Matilda's persona and hypnotized? I even at one point thought it might be the father, although the father must have been 160 years old by that point. So that was stretching credence even for Ace of Wands.
Although I guess there was the inference that the Major had picked up all these mystical skills while he was out in India. So one of the mystical skills might be de-aging, although not makeup.
Young man, don't take the piss out of my latex and wheelchair. I was perfectly believable as an old lady, with my Adam's apple sticking out prominently in several shots.
Did we enjoy this, kids? Yes, we did.
Overall,
Absolutely.
I really did. It's once you start analysing it, it falls to pieces. But you get carried along by the sheer verve of the acting and the absolute nerve of James Bree's performance, and you can't help but come away with a big smile at the end of it. And then you think, well, hang on, what the fuck was that I've just watched?
And the joy on the little old ladies bouncing up behind that bush that they've been on their saga activity day out.
Yes. There's just something intrinsically funny about old people doing things like this. And that just always brings a smile to my face anyway. I don't know whether it's something that everyone else has, but that certainly makes me laugh every time.
Well,
old people doing things that you don't expect them to do is funny.
Yeah, perhaps world domination needs to be added to the curriculum of the University of the Third Age.
Yes.
Supervillain classes.
Yeah, they're wasted. Wasted.
That would explain a lot about their performances, frankly.
Absolutely. A lot of sherry.
Yeah, and the look of absolute joy on their faces when they get to touch up Chaz.
Yeah, well, one of the things that struck me was the opening scene where Chaz goes to photograph a news report on this 100-year-old woman who refuses to show a telegram from the Queen. Not suspicious at all. But the incidental music's all really sinister when the old ladies are just basically simpering over Chaz and he's starting to look a little creeped out by this. That's what all old ladies do. I've never felt threatened by old ladies, and they all simper over me.
You just watch your back, Ken.
It's terribly flattering, but I don't feel violated by it. It's just... Oh, Dr. Exton's giving me the raised eye and the quizzical look.
No, I was just going to say that sometimes they can get a little handsy.
Oh, I've never been offered that. Let's back out of this conversation very quickly.
It's probably a good plan.
Please, yes. So to round off, would we recommend Ace of Wands to the listeners at home?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of this. It might not be sort of top flight entertainment, but I think you'll just be swept along with it. I think it's a joy to watch.
I would have to second that. And certainly from an archive TV perspective, it's a crying shame that the first two series don't exist. Because on the back of what I've seen, and it is only a tiny fragment so far, it does seem like a genuinely lovely series. It's well produced. The stories, for all that they are mental, they are quite entertaining. And as a kid at the time, it would probably been something that I was wildly enthusiastic about, and it would have been appointment viewing.
And it's really well remembered 50 years later. I think there were some repeats about 74, 75.
Because you speak so fondly of it, I can only assume that it was part of your growing up.
No, not at all.
No.
The Tomorrow People was. Ace of Wands was before my time. I speak fondly of it because I've seen them all and they're joyous. They're utterly bonkers, but in a really good, entertaining way, as opposed to the utter bonkersness of things like A Man for Emily.
No, that's bonkers on a different scale.
Yeah.
Don't watch that.
Absolutely.
We've watched it so you don't have to. Listen to previous podcasts.
And watch Peacock Pie. Peacock Pie is just a beautiful piece of television because everybody's so nice.
Yes.
You can't even call him a villain because he's just so lovely.
Yeah, played by the wonderful Brian Wilde, who gives a really great performance.
All I can see is Mr. Barraclough now doing, well, he plays Mr. Barraclough in everything he's in, so...
And in Peacock Pie.
In Peacock Pie.
But it's Mr. Barraclough with superpowers. But he's so terribly nice about it. And when Taro catches up with him and tells him what he's doing isn't really morally correct, then it's, okay. And he's a little bit disappointed and he goes off to live by the seaside.
Yes.
It's just gentle and lovely, and I really like Ace of Wands, but no, I don't remember it at the time.
But it is one to recommend if for nothing else other than the theme tune, which, thank you, Si, I now know is available on Spotify, and I'm going to look up immediately.
Mm-hmm.
My first exposure to Ace of Wands in any way was the article on Timescreen.
Refresh me, what was Timescreen?
Timescreen was a fanzine largely written by Andrew Pixley in the 80s, giving episode guides and articles on shows like Doomwatch, Ace of Wands, Sapphire and Steel, The Tomorrow People. And it's what really got me interested in telefantasy as a wider genre, because before that I'd been a Who fan.
For anyone out there that doesn't know, Andrew Pixley is
A god.
an archive god. The man researches things, stuff that you would never even think about researching, he'll find out for us.
There's a great booklet in the DVD set of Ace of Wands with viewing notes by Andrew Pixley, which tells you everything you need to know really about the series. He's just a phenomenon, isn't he?
Yeah, and he does quite a lot of the network booklets. So he did Sapphire and Steel, I think. He did the Pathfinders.
You've given me a booklet on late night horror.
Yeah, that's from Kaleidoscope. I don't think that's an Andrew Pixley one.
Just as a side note, as a sort of final note, all three of us are heavily into archive TV. Don't you think we are really, really lucky to have the releases that we have? Simon and I have discussed this. Si, I know that you'll probably feel the same way, but some of the stuff that we get out that is of negligible commercial value, and yet we still get it, and it's polished and shiny and wonderful and researched and presented in the best possible way.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I grew up in the 1980s reading about all of these shows and thinking, like most of Doctor Who, that I would never, ever get to see them, let alone own a copy of them all. And yeah, sometimes it sort of takes your breath away thinking about the things that you've seen and had a chance to see because someone has remembered this and someone's thought, actually, we could present this. And I mean, with the Ace of Wands set, there's a feature-length documentary that they made reuniting the cast, talking about the show. And there aren't huge numbers of shows that get that kind of treatment. It's really great.
But we've watched stuff, in fact, we've done a couple of things now, where it's been literally one episode that exists, released on a DVD, and it's polished and shiny, and there's documentaries and making-ofs and alternative. Last night we watched something called Late Night Horror, the surviving episode of that. What an amazing release that is from Kaleidoscope. It's one episode. You presented with the Chroma Dot recovery version, which is polished up and shiny. You presented with the original black and white version that they started from. And then there's a making of and a commentary and notes. And that's ridiculous for 1.5 hour piece of TV from the late 60s. It's ludicrous.
A fairly astounding 1.5
Yeah, exactly.
half hour.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful and very unpleasant piece of television. And another title sequence that's a bit nightmare fuelish.
That is nightmare fuel. If you've not seen the title sequence for Late Night Horror, look it up on YouTube, everyone. Oh, dear.
Oh, I will. Yeah, that's something new to me. It's not something I've heard of, so I will investigate that.
The episode is wonderful. It's available from Kaleidoscope. It's horrible. It's called Late Night Horror. It makes no bones about the fact that it's horrible. It was one of the first, if not the first, colour drama from the BBC. There's only one episode surviving. It's been cleaned up beautifully. It is really worth seeing, but it is nasty.
Okay.
Oh, God. I don't even want to think back to that.
I was going to ask a question of both of you.
Okay.
Because we're talking about Network and the wonderful, wonderful and obscure stuff they put out. And I've noticed that with the Network ATV Nights In, they've started putting out things where there's only one episode or a handful of surviving episodes. They're about to release the surviving episode of Misadventure, which we've seen before and is absolutely joyous. It's Hattie Jakes as a private detective, and it has to be seen to be believed. So I was going to ask the two of you, what is there left that you would really like Network to put out?
Oh, that's a great question.
It is. I'm going to have to search through the mental archive a minute here.
Well, shall I tell you my top two while you're thinking?
Yes, please do.
Right, there is a late 60s kids' TV programme called Object Z. Now, I've seen the first episode of this. The full first series survives. There was a sequel, and I think one episode might survive from it, but I'm not sure. It's a fully existing sci-fi drama from the tail end of the 1960s. My old PhD boss, who was a huge fan of British Telefancy, and we used to spend hours talking about it, said that he remembered it from when he was a teenager and absolutely loved it. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the existing episodes of The Odd Man as the first part of the Mr. Rose trilogy. We've got all the surviving episodes of It's Dark Outside, the second series with Mr. Rose, and we've got the entirety of the Mr. Rose series. All of those episodes survive. And there's a load of armchair theatres that I'd love to see. There's an early science fiction one called I Can Destroy the Sun, which is just wonderful. I've got it on an old AVI rip, I think. But it would be really nice to see in cleaned up picture quality. So I'd love to see more of the armchair theatres because generally they're absolutely wonderful. And we've done a couple of them on Exton Moss, and I've got a list of other ones that I want to do.
I'd quite like to see there was a BBC very late 60s sort of sci-fi adventure series called Counter-Strike.
I quite like Counter-Strike.
I'll take that as a no.
It's a definite. There was one episode with David Jason, which I did quite enjoy, but the rest of it bored the shit out of me.
Oh, fair enough.
But one's a reworking of a prisoner.
No. It's just one of those series that I don't know a lot about, but the little bits that I've seen and the people who wrote the episodes, I was quite intrigued by. But I will take your recommendation and leave it as a mystery.
No. You see, I would recommend it as something to watch. It is late 60s, so it's a bit slow. It has a bit of a feel of Undermined about it. And Undermined is a show that I really quite enjoy. The pilot episode is pretty pedestrian, but the other 3 surviving episodes are much more interesting. There's kind of a murder mystery thing on an Antarctic base. There's a reworking of one of the prisoner episodes. They're interesting things to see, and it's something I would like to see. Network doesn't tend to release BBC stuff, though. Although I think Counter-Strike is well within their wheelhouse. And it's about the only remaining 60s sci-fi series with any surviving episodes that hasn't been released by the BBC.
That's true. Yeah, there isn't very much, is there?
I think the only BBC science fiction series that has no existing episodes is R3.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before.
There are serials like The Big Pool, like The Monsters, but I think the only series is R3.
Well, my 2 choices for Network, I don't think either of them really fall into Network's remit, but the first one is a series called Outland, which I would love. It's a very, very unrecognised Australian series from about 10 years ago now, isn't it? 2012, starring Adam Richard. It's about a Doctor Who science fiction group in Australia, and it's just marvellous.
A gay science fiction group.
It is, it's marvellous.
Oh, that sounds brilliant.
Or more specifically, a small group of misfits who've been thrown out of a gay science fiction group and create their own little group and their own little enclave. It is utterly joyous.
Again, I don't know why it's not been picked up by, things like Doctor Who magazine and Outpost Gallifrey and whatever message boards are out there now, and is more widely known by Who fandom, because I was blissfully unaware until 2 or 3 years ago.
I've only met one other English fan who's known about it and seen it, and that's Matt Evenden, who knows everything.
Mm-hmm. That is something that Doctor Who fans would just absolutely go wild for. So it's mental. That would be my first choice. But second is an early 90s series with Peter Davison called Ain't Misbehaving, which nobody remembers. It was a sitcom that ran for 2 series.
I remember that.
You do remember it? And I loved it, largely because Peter Davison was in it, but it was quite a good sitcom. It was not. It genuinely was. It was nice and light and fluffy, and it was on Sunday night, so it's sort of the same level of seriousness and depth as Last of the Summer Wine, but it was really entertaining stuff. And it sort of ended on a cliffhanger, but I would buy that in a heartbeat if that was out on DVD.
Yeah, you see, there's a couple of sitcoms that I used to love. I'd really like to see one called Lame Ducks with John Deteen and Lorraine Chase.
Oh, well, John Deteen's in Ain't Misbehaving.
And one called Mog. Which I don't think would stand the test of scrutiny today, because it was set in an asylum and there's a lot of laughing at mental illness, and I enjoyed it at the time. I suspect I would find it an uncomfortable watch now, but Lame Ducks I would love to see.
Have we wandered far away from Ace of Wands to wrap this up, do you think, gentlemen?
I think we probably have.
We probably have. Si, thank you so much for joining us on today's little escapade. It's been lovely to have you back. Thank you so much. And thank you for suggesting it, because it was a joy to watch again.
Yep, anything that makes Ken watch more episodes of Ace of Wands is a good thing.
Well, you've got me hooked now, so it's not going to be too much of an uphill struggle. And please come back and we'll find something else to torture Ken with. Lovely. Until next time, boys and girls. Sounds good to me. Thank you so much, Si. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back next time. Ta-ta. Bye now. Bye.
The Exton Moss Experiment featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was performed by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com. or find us on social media.